Hi, my name is Dennis DeSantis. I'm the head of documentation at Ableton, and I'm going to introduce you to Ableton Push. I'm here with Sweetwater Worship Sound Pro. So Push was designed to give musicians a hands-on way of making new music from scratch without having to deal with the stuff that you have to deal with when you're working with a mouse and a computer. The main idea with Push was we wanted to give people a way to create beats by playing in real time and also step sequencing, play melodies and harmonies in a new way, control sounds, that is loading new sounds, adjusting the parameters of sounds, and then finally capturing all of that as patterns that could be mixed and matched with each other and finally combined into a new piece of music. So the heart of Ableton Push is this 8x8 pad grid, which changes its functionality depending on what kind of sound it's playing. So currently we're set up to play drums, and in drums mode, the pad grid is divided into 3 distinct sections. This set of 16 pads here is for real-time playing, the kind of classic 16-pad workflow you know from so many other drum machines. These 16 pads are for setting the length of your loop. So each pad here corresponds to 1 bar. You can press and hold one pad and then press another pad to set a loop that's that length. And then these 4 rows of pads are a step sequencer. The grid resolution of the step sequencer, the step size, is determined by this column of buttons here. So I can have each step be a quarter note or each step be a 32nd note triplet. I usually leave this at 16th notes, so you have 32 16th notes for a total of 2 bars. The last pad that you play is the one that's enabled for step sequencing. So I'm just going to put in some 8th note hi-hats. So you can see now the blue pads indicate that there are notes in those steps. The moving green cursor shows you is a playhead, basically, that shows you where you are in your pattern. I could turn a metronome on or off to get a sense of where we are in the beat. And if I want to overdub some real-time material, I just push this record button and start overdubbing. If I want to quantize that, I can set how much I want to quantize to by holding down the quantize button. Maybe I want to do 75% quantization to 16th notes. So it moves things part way onto the grid and keeping some humanized feel at the same time. So we've done step sequencing and real-time recording all on the same grid layout. There's also repeat mode. So if I enable repeat mode and hold down a pad, now these pads here determine the resolution of the repetition. And notice these pads are also pressure sensitive, so as I lean in, I get a louder velocity. And I can also do real-time swing for the pad that I'm repeating. So as I dial up the swing amount here, we have a dedicated encoder for swing. I can dial up to something like 35% or something, and then overdub this. So it's maybe hard to see on the camera, but the lighter colored pads here are indicating lower velocities and the darker pads are indicating higher velocities. So real-time playing and recording, step sequencing, note repeat recording, all on the same pad grid. And I don't have to switch modes to do that. We can just do all of it at the same time because we have so many pads. Now I'm going to move to another instrument now using these track select buttons. I have a piano preloaded on this instrument. So now the pads are playing pitches. We have 2 fundamentally different ways of dealing with pitch input when we're playing a pitched instrument. By default, we're playing in key. So the pad grid is totally diatonic now. The key that you're playing in is determined by these green buttons here, and then the scale type is determined by these yellow buttons here. So we're in C major by default, and all of the notes on the grid are in C major. I can move to a chromatic mode too, where all of the notes from a piano keyboard, for example, are now available and they're just kind of dumped onto the pad in an interesting configuration. And now the colors change and they tell us something about what we're doing. So the blue notes are the tonic, they're the key center. The white notes are the other notes in the scale, and the unlit pads are the non-diatonic notes. Since we're in C major, these are the black keys on a piano. So we move to the right by half step and up in perfect fourths. So I can play fully chromatic melodies now. I can play the head to giant steps, for example. So that's cool. It took me a little while to learn that, just like it would on any instrument. But unlike a piano, now that I've learned it in one key, I can transpose that anywhere just by shifting my hand to a new position. So on a piano, you have black keys and white keys in this kind of odd configuration, and when you want to transpose something, you have to learn a new arrangement of half steps and whole steps because the keys are in different places. Here, all of the keys are in the same place. So transposing a complicated melody like that is just a matter of shifting to a new position on the grid, but the fingering is the same. So if I want to play that a whole step higher, I just move over 2 half steps and play the same pattern. A couple wrong notes at the end, but you get the idea. So in the chromatic mode, we have huge amounts of flexibility to transpose really easily. And in key mode, we have no wrong notes. Every note now is in the scale. So we move to the right diatonically by scale degree and up in diatonic fourths for the key that we're in. A fast way to play a scale now is to play 3 pads in one row and then up to the next row. And now that I know the fingering for scale, I can switch to play a different scale by choosing a different key center and a different scale type or mode. So playing C major is the same as playing E Phrygian or B minor blues. It's all the same fingering. So what's interesting about this is, again, as we saw in the chromatic mode, you find positions for your hand to be in and lock that position to find a particular kind of harmony or melody pattern and then move around the pad grid. So for example, this is the pattern for triad, but it's all the diatonic triads in this key, just moved around the pad grid. This is also interesting for playing non-traditional harmony because we build in fourths, for example, in the columns. Finding fourth-based harmony is really easy. So I can play these kind of pseudo-jazz voicings without having to think about where my hands go as I move up and down. I just lock to a position and then move to a different place on the pad grid. So that's a look at how we do pitched entry on Ableton Push. And as far as I know, this is pretty unique, this way of laying out pitches on a pad grid. So let me load a different sound now. I push the browse button to get to browse mode, and now the encoders and the display give me an overview of the sounds that I have available. I'm going to choose a synth keys quality sound, and then I can scroll through presets using this encoder. When I find one that I like, let's see here, I can load it with this green button. Now I switch back to device mode, and I have parameters for that sound available with these encoders, so I can make changes to the quality or the timbre of the sound just by adjusting these knobs. Now I'd like to record some kind of pattern on top of the drum loop that I played before. So I'm going to say I want this to be 2 bars long. I'm setting a fixed length recording mode. You can also record endlessly until you punch out. But since I know I want to lay this over the drum clip that I recorded before, I'm setting fixed length to 2 bars. And I start playback of the drum clip that we recorded before, and then I'll just punch in and start recording. Let me quantize that, and let me record some automation on top of this. And I punch out when I'm done. Now let me move to a different track where I have a bass sound already loaded. And then I can overdub on top of that. Quantize that, maybe do a filter sweep at the end of the pattern, and punch out of that. So I could keep creating patterns and loops like this all day long. I could create iterations and variations of the stuff that I've been doing so far. Once I've got some material together, I'm going to move out of note mode and into session mode. And now you can think of kind of zooming out on this material, right? Before, every pad was playing a note, or in the step sequencer mode, it was assigning a step or turning it on and off. Now, the pads represent the loops themselves. So I can start and stop a clip by pressing the pad that corresponds to that clip. If I want to launch the bass line, and it waits till the beginning of the next bar. If I want to launch all 3 of those at the same time, I can press the scene launch buttons on the side to start and stop them together. If I press a blank pad it stops the clip that's in that track and waits till the beginning of the next bar. So I can launch some material that I already have in here. So you've been working the whole time from Ableton Push to create this new material, but what we've really been doing is creating clips in Live Session View. So at this point, I move over to the computer and everything that I've been doing has been saved in the session view as new material. I've been creating clips the whole time. So the workflow that we imagine for this is you start with nothing from Ableton Push, load sounds, play an instrument with your hands on, away from the computer, away from the sort of boring distractions that come from a computer and away from a mouse, really playing the instrument. Your hands are on the encoders, your fingers are on the pads, and you've been creating clips and loops this whole time, so your song is part way to being finished already in Live. Then when you're done, you turn over to Live and mix and do the kind of editing things that Live is really good at, arranging this into a finished song. So starting here, moving over to Live is the plan, and that's a quick overview of working with Ableton Push. Both Ableton Push and Ableton Live 9 will be available soon at sweetwater.com.